All right, let's just get right into it. Have you ever felt completely, utterly alone while sitting in the exact same room as the person you love most? Today, we're taking a close look at something that rarely makes the highlight reel of relationship trauma. It's not really dramatic enough for a movie. There are no shouting matches, absolutely no plates being thrown. And yet, as we dig into today's explainer of the clinical source material, we learn that this specific dynamic destroys way more marriages than infidelity. It ruins more partnerships than money and more families than addiction. We're talking about the silent killer of relationships, emotional neglect. It does its damage so slowly, so silently, and with just terrifying efficiency. To really wrap our heads around what this looks like in the real world, picture this. You've got a couple sitting in a therapist office. The woman is in tears and she's desperately saying, I feel like I'm screaming into a void. Now look at the man sitting across from her. He's staring at the floor, totally bewildered, and he says, I don't even know what I did wrong. And you know what the absolute most heartbreaking part of this is? Neither of them is lying. This is the brutal paradox of our topic today. You have one partner who is practically drowning in loneliness while the other genuinely believes everything is totally fine. Literally, no one threw a punch. No one had an affair, but something as vital as oxygen has just quietly been sucked right out of the room. Moving on to section one, defining emotional neglect. So, how do we actually define what it is that's missing? Let's take a look at how clinical psychologist frames this invisible problem. Because honestly, getting the definition right is the very first step to getting your oxygen back. We need to be clear. This isn't just about feeling a little disappointed. This is about a fundamental biological necessity. What's super interesting here is how we separate two concepts we usually lump together: abuse and neglect. Sure, they can happen at the same time, but they are fundamentally different beasts. If you look at the left side, abuse is the presence of something harmful, it's a toxic action. But on the right, neglect is the sustained absence of something vital. See, your nervous system is constantly asking your partner two huge questions. Are you there for me? And am I enough for you? Emotional neglect is the agonizing experience of just getting a no to those questions day after day until your body basically stops asking and starts throwing up armor to protect itself. And this brings us to a wildly fascinating concept known as the dingo response. Okay. So when your partner stares at their phone instead of looking at you when you're trying to connect, your brain doesn't just register, mild annoyance. It registers a literal threat to your life. I know that sounds intense, but your ancient limbic system doesn't know you're safe in a modern living room. It evolved out on the savannah, where if the person watching your back turns away, a predator like a dingo could literally come and get you. So when your partner fails to respond to an emotional bid, your primal brain starts screaming, I am in mortal danger. It sounds crazy, but it is exactly what your nervous system believes is happening. Let's move into section two, the 7 signs of neglect. So what does this nervous system panic actually look like in your day-to-day life? We're going to break down the tangible signs of neglect. And hey, as we go through these, if you recognize them in yourself, please remember these are diagnostically significant data points. They are not character flaws. To set a baseline for us, take a look at this number, 86%. This comes directly from the renowned relationship researcher, Dr. John Gottman. He found that healthy couples turn toward each other's bids for connection, a shared joke, a heavy sigh, a random question, about 86% of the time. Now, in emotionally neglectful relationships, those bids aren't just missed, they're actively treated as interruptions. When "can't you see I'm busy" becomes the default response in your house, that's not a scheduling conflict, folks. That is a profound relational wound. So, what are the actual red flags that you're living in this deficit? First off, you just stop sharing your feelings, not because you don't have them, obviously, but because you've learned that reaching out leads absolutely nowhere. It's basically emotional surrender. Second, you turn into a detective of micro expressions, of you're constantly watching their face, dissecting how long it took them to text back, just starving for any crumb of warmth. Third, you find yourself performing happiness for the outside world. You end up creating this Grand Canyon sized gap between your Instagram feed and your actual reality. And finally, the most dangerous sign of all, you lose trust in your own emotional reality. You start thinking, man, maybe I'm too needy. Maybe I just expect too much. You literally start gaslighting yourself. All right, section 3, the photo bomb effect. But why does it hurt this much? Why can't we just, brush it off and go about our day? Well, this brings us to a brilliant visual concept that explains the neurobiology of why your partner's distance hurts exponentially more than being ignored by literally anyone else on the planet. Imagine taking a wide angle photo of your entire life, your career, your friends, your hobbies, the whole shebang. Look at the chart we have here. Your partner has photobombed 70% of that image. Your attachment system is literally designed to orient around your primary partner. They aren't just another person in the room, they are the actual lens through which you experience safety and belonging. So think about it. If a stranger ignores you, it's just a tiny blip in that 30% slice. But when your partner looks away, 70% of your universe goes dark. You are rendered invisible in the vast majority of your own world. No wonder it hurts, which naturally leads us to section 4, the waltz of pain. Now that we've got a handle on the symptoms and the biology, let's look at the core conflict. It is so incredibly easy to fall into this whole victim versus villain mentality here. But I got to tell you, that is rarely accurate and it is always destructive. Instead, let's look at what's really happening between two people. We call this the waltz of pain. On the left, we have the neglected partner, what we call the relentless lover. They experience their partner's withdrawal as existential abandonment. So naturally, they protest, they criticize, they demand, they push, because to them, they are fighting to save the relationship. On the right, we have the reluctant lover, and here's the twist: they aren't withdrawing out of coldness. They're usually withdrawing to survive their own profound shame and this deep fear of not being enough. So, to the relentless lover, the reluctant lover looks like a brick wall. But to the reluctant lover, the relentless lover looks like this impossible criticizing standard. They are both wrong about the other's motives, but they are both entirely right about their own pain. So, the absolutely crucial point here is how we address this massive miscommunication. And to do that, we have to look at the car crash principle. I absolutely love this analogy. Imagine you accidentally hit a pedestrian with your car and, God forbid, break their leg. You jump out of the car and yell, "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to hit you. Does that fix their leg?" Well, of course not. In matters of love, intention is completely irrelevant to your partner's nervous system. Only impact matters. The emotionally unavailable partner almost never intends to cause harm. They honestly might just lack the blueprint for connection. But defending your good intentions, that just kills intimacy. Your job isn't to defend your character. Your job is to attend to the wound. Let's dive into section 5, the roots and the toll on your body, which brings us to a really massive realization. Where does this all come from? And what is it actually doing to you physically? Because let's be clear, this isn't just in your head. Emotional neglect leaves a very real, highly measurable toll on the human body. Often the roots trace all the way back to childhood. I want you to meet a protector part of your psyche called the invisible one. If you grew up in a family system that didn't provide emotionally attuned safety, you learned pretty quick that having needs was a huge liability. So as a kid, you curled up against the wall and breathed as quietly as possible so you wouldn't be a burden. Now, that was a brilliant survival strategy at age 4. But at age 40, the invisible one is running your adult relationship. It's that part of you that says, I'm fine, when you are literally dying inside, pretty much ensuring you remain totally unseen and keeping that invisible one in charge. It is destroying your body. Just look at this table. Emotional neglect physically changes your physiology. Your nervous system is constantly, frantically searching for safety, which leads to chronic cortisol elevation, and that means heart issues and completely ruined sleep. You experience emotional numbing, which is actually your body's protective dissociation kicking in. You suffer from hypervigilance, constantly scanning for threats, so much that you can literally never relax. And it manifests in very real somatic symptoms. We're talking tension, headaches, chronic pain, gut inflammation. Your relationship is essentially the petri dish you live in. If the water in that dish is toxic, individual self-care, like doing a little yoga or journaling, it's not going to save you. You are suffering a biological reaction to a deep relational wound. Finally, we get to section 6, healing or moving on. So how do we fix this? What is the actual clinical roadmap out of this profound isolation? In this final section, we're going to look at the concrete steps for couples who are willing to do the rigorous work of repair. And yeah, we'll also talk about the hard truth of when it might be time to just walk away. Healing this is incredibly hard, but it is 100% possible if both partners are willing to drop their armor. Step 1, collapse the blame line. You have to stop arguing over who started it. The waltz of pain is a circle, guys, not a straight line. Step 2, see the fear behind the face. You really must learn to see the sheer terror hiding behind your partner's blank stare or their angry criticism. Step 3, provide the missing experience. This means safely meeting your partner's vulnerability in the raw, trembling present moment, not, waiting for therapy next Thursday, but right now. And step 4, practice micro-attunement daily. Grand romantic gestures don't fix this. It does looking up from your phone when they walk into the room. These aren't just sweet little gestures. They are actual biological interventions telling your partner's nervous system that they are safe. But hey, we have to be completely honest here. Not every relationship can or even should be saved. If you have clearly and calmly communicated your needs and they are just consistently dismissed, if your bids for connection are treated like you're just being annoying, and if your physical health is actively deteriorating from the chronic stress, well, it might be time. If you have done the work, if you've offered pathways to repair and your partner consistently refuses to engage, you have to realize they aren't just incapable, they are choosing not to. Leaving in this scenario is not a failure. Actually, sometimes it is the absolute most loving choice you can make for yourself. The wound of emotional neglect is incredibly real, and I need you to hear this. It is not your fault, but the path forward, that is entirely yours to choose. You can definitely continue to shrink, to let the invisible one run your life, breathing as quietly as possible so you don't burden anyone. Or you can turn towards your partner, step out into the light, and demand the emotional oxygen you absolutely deserve. Which leaves us with one vital, really profound question for you to consider today. Are you ready to look across the room and say, I need you to see me? If you want to work on this for real, try Figlet, my AI relationship coaching app. You can start for free, no credit card needed, at figlet.empathy.com.